Hi, it's that time of year, spring, when the river coarse fishermen, they absolutely dread it. Comes around every year and they can't fish the beloved rivers for chub or barbel or whatever for 3 long months. There is an alternative. You can fish on still waters and most canals, and another alternative, which is take up fly fishing. Primarily for trout. Spring is basically all about trout. If you're a bit more advanced and you've got deeper pockets, maybe salmon as well. But certainly trout fishing, great alternative sport to try out. And once you've developed your fly fishing skills a little bit, you can transfer it to coarse fish as well. You can fish on canals, rivers. Once they're back in season, you can carry on using your fly fishing techniques to catch your coarse fish as well as your trout and salmon. We'll have a look at the tackle unit you're going to be using, how much it might cost, which could well surprise you if you're thinking it's going to cost a lot of money, and the sort of range of the range of tackle, the weights of lines and rods, etc. I mean, you could be fishing with flies as small as this or this, and you could be maybe fly fishing for pike and using flies as big as that. So quite a range of tackle and techniques to look into. Okay. Here's one or two of the rod, reel and line setups that I use quite a bit. Start off with the smallest and lightest. That's a 7-foot brook rod. 7 foot, sorry. We've got a very sort of low cost reel. It's from something from the 1970s and 80s. This I always buy them if I see them at tackle fairs or car boot sales. Usually pick them up for a £5. It's just it's basically sort of a very primitive centre pin. It's a very basic fly reel, no gears, any sort of complicated mechanisms. As you can see in there, it's just a couple of basic, very cheap spring ratchets. It does the job fine. If I want to wind in, or if I want to retrieve line by winding in, I just turn that handle. If I want to pull line off, there's no drag setting or anything, it's just automatic. If I'm playing a heavy fish and I want to sort of create my own drag, I'll just the thumb of my left hand while I'm holding the rod, and that'll just increase the friction. Very, very simple. So we got very basic fly reel as described earlier. This is the first thing that goes onto the fly reel, which is the backing line. I think this is braided terraline. It can be nylon or standard braid line. Nylon's probably the cheapest to use. Anything that's quite strong, and the reason it's there is A, to build up the level on the spool so that the line doesn't fall into too tight coils, and the other thing, if you're lucky enough to hook an exceptional fish that strips the entire fly line through your rod rings in a great big long run, you don't run out of line, you've still got the backing. So this is attached by a loop to loop, or in this case a figure of 8 knot, to the thin end of this, which is a double taper fly line. Double taper means that it's thin at either end and thick in the middle. Good for presentation, and you can also reverse them so that this end becomes the fly end, if you will, when they start getting a bit worn at the end that's normally used near the fly and cast. So let's have a look at casts. The cast is the stretch of nylon at the end of the fly line, which makes it possible for you to catch the fish. Basically, the fly line's way too coarse to have anything anywhere near it. It casts a big shadow, and you've got to keep the end of the fly line as far away from the fish as possible when you're trying to tempt it to rise to your fly. This is a pre-made one. You can either make your own out of several different spools of nylon and taper it down from thick to thin, or you can get one of these, which is a pre-made one. This is from Gray's of Alnwick, and as you can see it tapers down to 4 pounds. I guess the breaking strain at the thick end is probably nearer to maybe 16 or 18 pounds, I'm not sure. This particular one doesn't have a preformed loop, it's just a straight bit of line, so you can either needle knot that to the end of the fly line, or you can tie your own loop in it and then do a loop to loop knot, or else a figure of 8 knot. There's another video I'm going to refer you to that explains cast knots, probably one of the best ones I've ever seen, so I'll post that somewhere in the comments and then you can follow it up. Length of cast is usually maybe a foot longer than the rod, so if I'm using a little 7-foot brute rod, I'll probably use maximum of an 8-foot cast, because anything longer is going to be difficult to handle, especially if there's a bit of a wind. On a longer rod, say 10 or 11 feet, I might use up to a 12 or 13 foot cast, depending on the wind, if it's not too windy, and if the fish are a little bit edgy and shy. The longer the cast, the better your chances of getting something to rise to your fly. As I said, it's a brute to handle a long cast in the wind, but usually if you've got a wind ripple or you're fishing in quite fast water in a river, a long cast isn't really necessary. Okay. Yeah, so each of these rod and line setups has their own application. Like I say, the lighter two of these are for small rivers. I've more recently got a 3 metre 4-weight line, so it's a long rod that takes a light line. I'm hoping to try that out on the bigger rivers a bit more exhaustively, so that's another sort of aspect to the rod and line setup. It's something tackle manufacturers, it's only the last 2 years they've started catering for this. At one time you had a very short 7-foot rod, it'd be for a light line, and the longer the rod, the heavier the line. Well, thank God they've managed to bring a bit more flexibility into it now. So let's see how we go on with the new toys, maybe on the next video after this. Okay, thanks a lot.
Right, so with a spinning or a bait rod, we open the bail arm, clamp the line with our finger, let it go, line pulls off the spool under the weight of the spinner or float or ledger weight, whatever we're using, and that's that, the cast is made and we can fish.
Unlike a bait fishing setup where we can cast directly off the reel, we can't with the fly fishing, so what we have to do if we want to extend the line with the next cast is pull off a bit of slack off the reel, back cast, let it go on the forward cast, and it'll pull itself through the rings with the momentum of the line outside the rod. Just show you that again. So big loop, back cast, forward cast, and it's all gone.
So now we come to playing a fish on fly tackle, which is quite a bit different. Small fish, I can clamp the line against the rod handle with my casting hand and pull the loop back through like that and more or less haul it straight in. With the bigger fish, really we want to get that line back onto the reel to play the fish out properly, so we'll keep it under a bit of pressure while we clamp it, get the line back on the reel, and then it's pretty well like playing a fish off a centre pin reel with the ratchet on, quite straightforward. Casting, so here we have the hammer grip, and we'll flick a bit of line out, pull some off the reel, some slack, watch for where we can do our back cast there, flick a bit of line out, and we start the casting process properly, where we lift, pause slightly and then flick it forward. The rod shouldn't really go beyond vertical, maybe back to 1 o'clock but no further. There we go. We're gradually extending that line. Every time we make the cast, we're just flicking some of that slack through the rod rings on the forward cast. As we do so, the pause gets a little bit longer at the vertical. We're actually letting the fly swing round in the river at the moment. As it fishes, draw a little bit back through the rod rings, make it move a little bit like you would a spinner, and that slack's there ready for the next cast, that loop between the reel and the first rod ring. Now with false casting, we're keeping the line airborne. Once you get used to the overhead cast, you can start false casting. That means both the front and back cast, the line doesn't actually touch the water. And once you get really into it, your false casting, you'll be feeding a little bit of line out with every forward cast. And so starting off with quite a short line and then ending up with quite a big line where you actually drop it on the river. This makes more sense when you're actually doing it with an instructor, which I do recommend. Maybe start off on a still water where you can get a casting lesson for, I don't know, 20 or 30 pounds or whatever. Now here we are on the river, and this is the way I advise beginners to start, with the wet fly downstream and across. The line's right down there on the dangle, straight down in the current. We flick it across, false casting, and there we go, 30-45 degrees downstream-ish. And we just let that line swing round in the current, and those flies will fish quite attractively. When the river's up like this is a good method, especially with bigger wet flies and lures. There we are, straight across, let it swing round. Maybe sometimes try pulling the fly as well, make it fish a little bit faster. And there we go, we're in. Good fish on.
Looks like sea trout, and it's on the tail fly. Was it a good brownie? I don't know. I'm not doing the acrobatics of a sea trout, but it's not a bad fish. What have we got here? Going upstream. Well, it is a sea trout. And what a big one. Not a bad one.